Get ready to order up a big, fat, juicy steak, in quotes, when Robin scopes out a high-end nightclub that caters to vampires. It's all right here in our review of fairy tale team-up, Robin Hood and Van Helsing from Zenescope Entertainment. See you in 3. Welcome back to Comical Opinions. This is our review of fairy tale team-up, Robin Hood and Van Helsing from Zenescope Entertainment. Since this is a one-shot and there's no setup issue for this one, we're going to just dive right in. The tale begins with a woman named Jenny who brings a trio of acquaintances to the upper level of a nightclub that she frequents. The nightclub is rumored to be run by vampires. The vampires have established a reputation of only feeding on volunteers and not taking enough blood to kill them. So it's sort of a cool to hang out with vampire scenario, but not so much that you're actually going to die unless you want to be turned, and then it becomes a whole procedure and process, but it's very much symbiotic. That night, however, something is different, and Jenny's friends, the 3 friends she brought up to the upper level, do not leave that club alive. Later, we catch up with Robin Hood, who's dressed in a clubbing outfit to scope out the club supposedly run by vampires. She's approached by a man with obvious fangs and offers to go wherever he cares to lead because she wants to know where the vampires are hanging out in the club. Their secret rendezvous, however, nearly turns into an accidental murder when Robin finds out the man who is play acting as a vampire is not really a vampire, just wearing fake teeth because he's a poser. Robin storms out of the club because she thinks her mission is a bust. There's nothing really going on, but while she's coming around the corner, she notices 2 large men who appear to be vampires stuffing a body into a dumpster in the alley. She approaches the men thinking they're also fake vampires, but it turns out they're real, and a fight breaks out. Robin manages to stake one of them. The other one runs away after she bloodies his nose and messes up his face pretty bad. But then she goes to examine the body that they were trying to dump in the dumpster, and she finds out the body is indeed drained in blood, but not in the traditional way with fangs in the neck. It looks like a needle had been used to drain the body out of the arm. Tired but not wanting to go home, Robin Hood heads over to the apartment of Liesl Van Helsing, the city's resident vampire hunter, to inform her of what she found. They have a cup of tea, relax with some chit-chat just to kind of decompress a little bit. And Van Helsing says she knows about the club that's run by vampires, but they have a sort of unspoken agreement that as long as they don't kill anybody and as long as the people who come to them to be fed off of are doing it voluntarily and nobody gets hurt and nobody dies, then she's okay with leaving it alone. She patrolled them for years, but nothing ever happened. But hearing now that there has been a body dumped in a dumpster by some vampires, she thinks either their deal has been broken or something has changed, maybe new leadership, and yeah, they need to team up to figure out what's going on. The next night, Robin and Liesl return to the club that Robin visited the first night. They're dressed in their clubbing outfits to try and maintain some level of undercover appearance, and they head straight to the upper levels, but only after receiving an invitation written on a napkin that says come upstairs. So it looks like their arrival was foretold and expected. Robin barges into the upstairs private room, if you will, the VIP section, ready to go state crazy, ready to take out any vampire she finds, and she finds 3 vampires that are all elders, and they're kind of amused that Robin would try to attack them outright. Liesl says, chill out, these are elders, you're not going to beat them that easily, and let's keep a respectful distance and talk and see if we can figure out what's going on here. The trio of elder vampires who call themselves the Infernal reaffirm that they're committed to not killing humans. They run a respectable place. However, their brother, a gentleman, elder vampire by the name of Zehan, has parted ways with their group, and he wants to turn people into vampires like the old ways, as it were. The Infernal have sworn that they would never raise their hand against one of their own kind or against their brother in particular. So they make a unique offer. They say, can you please help us by capturing Zehan and putting him down if necessary to make sure that he doesn't start raising up a vampire army. Liesl and Robin accept the offer, or invitation I should say, and they said, well, where is he going to be next? And they said, well, we have a initiation ceremony, if you will, somebody who is offered the opportunity to become a vampire, and we have a big sort of ceremony and ball that goes with it. Zehan's probably going to strike there if he's going to strike anywhere else. So when the ceremony comes up, Liesl and Robin attend, decked out in this sort of goth ball gown type of outfits to blend in with the crowd. They keep an eye on everything, and sure enough, Zehan makes his move and attacks, and the whole scenario breaks out into a big brawl. Robin and Liesl appear to have their hands full, but they manage to use a bunch of hidden weapons that we got in their dress in very tight places to take down Zehan's lieutenants and his followers. And eventually they do take down Zehan himself. And so now all is right with the world. The club goes back to being run by the Infernal, which are the elders who have a non-killing agreement. And Liesel and Robin go off to relax and watch the sunrise. However, all is not as it seems, and it looks like the team-up's vampire problems are far from over. That's the issue. Presumably there'll be more to come in the future, but let's talk about the technical aspects, starting with the character work. Pat Shand is most commonly known as a Van Helsing writer, so he does a great job here. But Robin Hood really takes the stage for most of this team up. She's written with, guff and gusto, brash, brazen charm, and all the things you've come to expect from a rough and tumble New Yorker, which is what Robin Hood really is. Plus, Shand gives the kind of rapport and the camaraderie and the relationship between Robin and Liesel a nice, easy, relaxed tone, which kind of gives you the very strong impression that, you can imagine these two being friends as well as fighting colleagues and co-heroes. Let's switch over to talk about the art, which is arguably the weakest part of this comic. We have a plethora of artists on this book, really broken into the first half and then the second half. Alessio Mariani's pencils and inks are rough. They're not terrible, but not great. And unfortunately, the way he's presenting all the female characters, they look gaunt and emaciated, like they're starved or sickly, which is not very great looking. When the book switches over to Danya Manet at the midway point, the art improves. It looks much better, more fully fleshed out. And I don't mean that necessarily in the figure anatomy, but just overall, it's a cleaner, nicer looking book in the halfway point. So you get a jarring transition, incompatible styles, and just overall not very satisfying visual appearance. Let's move over to talk about pacing and structure. Shand's pacing is smooth, steady, and engaging. I mean, you're not going to have any hiccups, no drawn out long pauses or scenes that linger too long, which is a good thing. And the energy of the story in general stays pretty high, so you're engaged all the way through and holds your attention. The plot structure is pretty, I would say, standard to vanilla kind of vampire setup. There's nothing overly unique or super creative here, except for the twist. And the twist is that, of course, Liesel and Robin are effectively hired to take down their brother by a trio of elder vampires. So that's a little bit unique, but overall, it's pretty standard stuff. As far as a down pointer, if there's any, is one minor one, which is when you meet Jenny in the very beginning and she brings her three friends up to the vampire, who we now know as Zehan, in the nightclub in the beginning of the story, in the prologue. It's a different nightclub than when we first meet Robin, and she's staking out the nightclub looking for who she believes are vampires killing their patrons. So it's actually two different nightclubs, but you would never get that from the art. And there's nothing in the story that necessarily calls it out that these are two separate nightclubs. You figure it out later through the explanation of the story from the elder vampires, but in the beginning, it feels like it's the same place, so it's a little confusing. Let's move over to talk about the themes and thematic structure. It's not obvious, but the general theme here is about trust. Humans are trusting elder vampires to be a part of their world in a symbiotic relationship at the nightclub. Liesel trusts the elder vampires to stick to their promise of no killing. And the team up ultimately stems from a broken trust between Zehan and his siblings, which are the elder vampires of the Infernal. So it's all about trust. Characters trusting each other, and sometimes that trust is rewarded, sometimes that trust is broken. If we take a step back and look at the bigger picture, just find out where this team up fits in the greater Grimm fairy tales universe, the answer is it doesn't really look like it does. It's in current mainline continuity, but the things that are going on in the main Grimm fairy tales story about Lovecraftian horrors and big cosmic type developments apparently have no play or sway in this particular issue. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but just if you're looking for interconnectedness here, there doesn't appear to be any. So final thoughts. What do we think about fairy tale team up Robin Hood and Van Helsing? You get a pretty standard heroes versus vampire story, but there is a little bit of a unique twist, so there's something to hold on to. The general story execution from concept to pacing and plot are all pretty solid stuff, but the art is a mixed bag because you get a very different visual presentation in the first half than the second half, and it doesn't flow very well. Therefore, we're going to give Fairy Tale Team Up, Robin Hood and Van Helsing from Zenescope Entertainment a 6.5 out of 10. Let us know what you think. Are you a fan of Zenescope titles, the Grimm fairy tale books, Robin Hood or Van Helsing, or just the whole concept of heroes versus vampires? I mean, that's getting a lot of play lately, especially with Marvel's big Blood Hunt event. Let us know what you think. And also, leave a comment down below if you want. I want to know if you think that vampires are kind of played out. Starting to feel that way, maybe especially this year. But let me know, and maybe I'm off base. Otherwise, thank you for joining, and please stay tuned through the outro for the next review.